Hi everyone, this is Elsa. Thank you for joining in. Today I'm in conversation with Eirliani Abdul Rahman. This is the Amazing Grace Facebook Live series where I'm talking to contemporary women leaders and they are doing extraordinary things. I get to meet these wonderful women through the various networks that I'm part of. And I really want to bring their stories to you so that you can be inspired, motivated, as well as, you can contact them for any collaboration or guidance or support or whatever. So welcome, Eirliani.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're my first guest who's not a Wolf Fellow. But we are part of the Diplomacy Lab, which is a German Foreign Office initiative. Eirliani, I don't want to give her introduction. Why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
So my name is Eirliani, as Elsa has mentioned, and I work on child protection and child rights, specifically on child sexual abuse and child sex trafficking.
Great. And did you always do this?
No, I was a diplomat at the Singapore Foreign Service for 10 years, and I resigned 3 years ago to do this.
Yes. And so can you tell us, before we begin and launch straight into your long career, tell us 3 adjectives that describe you.
Gosh, adventurous, resilient, and I would say maybe kind.
Wow, adventurous, resilience, and kindness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even though kindness didn't come up specifically, I think most of my previous guests are very kind. Resilience has shown up several times, and even adventurous has not really shown up, but I know personally that the other women are all super adventurous as well. Okay, so now coming back to your career as a foreign diplomat, why did you want to be a foreign diplomat? How did you get into the foreign service? And as a woman in the Singaporean Foreign Office, were you like one of many or one of a kind?
Sure. I was a very quirky kid, and I knew at the age of 11 that I wanted to become a diplomat, and so I was very consistent about it too. I was learning languages from the age of about 12. And why is because I have this patriotic zeal inside me, and I was very keen to represent my country in things and trying to promote trade and do things so that the world's a bit of a better place.
Okay, I am going to try and figure this out because this doesn't seem like it's, rotating. I'm trying to figure out on my Facebook Live, it looks like we are upside down. So I'm just trying to fix that.
And just to your question about how many women there are, it's about 50% women in the Singapore Foreign Service, and disproportionately, it's slightly bit more as you go up the ranks a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I've not had this happen to me, so I'm just trying to figure out why is it on rotation mode. Okay, let's just continue and I can post the video back later. But if you have any comments during the course of this discussion with Eirliani, please feel free to put it in the comments section or any questions as well. Okay, so You actually had many stints in many different interesting countries, including India. So
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the countries that you went to and what are the kind of, initiatives you took up?
So I studied in London, in England, London School of Economics at Warwick University, and also studied at Moscow State University in Moscow. And I worked with Professor Michael Porter from Harvard Business School in Kazakhstan on the Kazakhstan Competitiveness Program. So basically we looked at industries and how we can promote and catalyze them. And we had to, weed it down from 74 industries down to 7. And so that was a really interesting project. I also lived, as you mentioned, Elsa, in Delhi for 5 years. So I was a diplomat there, the number 3 in the Singapore High Commission in Delhi. And after that, I worked with Kailash Satyarthi, the Nobel Peace Prize laureate, for 2 years. So so it's overall really interesting. And now I live in the US in Colorado.
And what made you make that career shift? Because even I made a career shift and it was never easy. So what made you decide that one day you no longer wanted to work with the Singapore Foreign Office and that you wanted to help out Kailash Satyarthi?
Actually, when I was 17, I saw a video on dowry burning. So a woman, she was dying and then on her deathbed, she named the person who had tried to kill her.
An Indian woman?
It was, I think, South Asia. I would just keep it. I don't remember the specifics, but it was really very distressing to watch that. And I told myself that before I turned 40, that I would do something about it, give a voice to the voiceless, and give them a platform. And so I kept that vow, and so I resigned like 3 years ago to carry out this childhood dream.
And what was the moment? Because even I reached a stage where I felt that it was the right moment for me. But I'm curious, what made you think that it was the right moment for you to quit the foreign service?
Yeah.
And I have to explain that you were pretty high up. So your next portfolio or your next promotion would have been ambassador.
Yeah, it would have to be some time, but something
so
like
she
that,
would have been ambassador of Singapore to some country. So to quit at that moment and to make a complete career shift is something really courageous, in my opinion. So what was that driver?
I think the universe kind of came together in the year that I was thinking of leaving in 2014. I met a member of parliament while I was doing my rounds to say goodbye. And then he said...
An Indian member of
parliament, yeah. And he was saying, why did you come and meet Kailash Satyarthi? I'm having him over for coffee at my place this weekend. And I did. And I met him. This is before he got the prize at Oslo.
Okay.
And I said to him, I said to Satyarthi, can I do a campaign with you on child sexual abuse? And he said, sure, why not? And so the next year, I took no pay leave to work and learn how to use social media. Had to learn how to do it on Facebook, Twitter, and then and it worked out. Like I got the BNW Responsible Leaders Award. That gave me a big career, like a boost, and some confidence. And then I said, okay, it's time to go. It's time to do it.
I'm getting goosebumps listening to you because your journey is similar to mine. I mean, I was at the height of my career when I made the switch, but I had to learn everything from scratch, especially how to use social media to engage people as well as talk about your cause. Why did you pick child sexual abuse or child rights as your cause?
Well, I think it's really a taboo and people don't really talk about it. And I know people who have been through incest or abuse just in general. And I really just wanted to do something about that, break the taboo, break the silence and do something about it.
Okay. And you founded your own organization, YAKIN, which is Youth and Adult Survivors and Kin in Need. So tell us a little bit about this organization and what you're doing about it.
Yeah, so basically I set it up with Professor Daniel Fong. He's the chairman of the medical board of the Singapore Institute of Mental Health. And in our work, it's basically trying to help child victims and adult survivors of child sexual abuse. So we co-wrote this book together. It's called Survivors, Breaking the Silence on Child Sexual Abuse. It was launched in November last year, and now it's its second print run. So it's a story of 5 men and 7 women from Germany, India, Indonesia, Myanmar, Singapore, South Africa, UK, and the US. And it's really quite eye-opening because we think it's the first compendium of adult survivors coming together to contribute to a book like this. Most of the time, it's always the story of one person doing an autobiography. So I think it found resonance, which is why I guess it kind of sold out the first print run.
And I have to tell you that I read the book some time ago and it's so gripping. I had to do it in one sitting. I mean, the stories are pretty well captured, and I've been working on this issue for like 5 years now, but it was still quite shocking and amazing at the same time. I love the fact that you featured male survivors, 5 males and 7 female survivors, and that's important because we don't really talk about male survivors who are victims of abuse,
right.
And it's hard for them to talk.
Yes.
And actually, after this Facebook Live at Yale, we are hosting a book reading of Eirliani's book Survivors. And we have a male survivor, Michael, who's here with us to share his personal story. So I think it's going to be a really interesting discussion. I've been for your discussion as well. Can you tell us a bit about the process? Like, how did you go about getting these people to open up? Because breaking the silence is really a challenge. I find that very challenging at Safe City, where we are anonymously crowdsourcing reports of sexual violence, and yet even though it's anonymous, it's hard for people to talk about it.
No, it's true. I think I was quite lucky. I sent out an email back in December 2014 asking people to come forward with contacts that they know, friends that they know, and so that's what happened, and it's been pretty effective. Some of them were like friends that I met through my work. Others were references from friends. And actually now with the 12 people in the book, most of us remain in touch on social media or some other way, and a lot of them have been coming consistently to the book readings that I've organized. So today at Yale University, later with Elsa, it's my 11th book reading.
And you just came back from Armenia where you had a book reading.
Yeah.
You've been going all over the world, right?
Yeah.
What has been the reaction in these places?
It's actually really interesting with the population that's a bit older than 25 years old, and also because it depends on the life cycle of sexual abuse. When you're abused as a child, it's so traumatic that you tend to repress the memory and stuff. So when you first start looking at it and examine what happened to you, it will probably be in your mid-20s. And then when you try to seek help and try to do something about what's happened, probably in your 30s. So I think the book readings with the most resonance have been the ones where it's a bit older population. And there's one in Hamburg where we had it at the Bucera Summer Law School, organized by the Zeit newspaper, the Zeit Foundation. And half the room was literally in tears. There were 70 people. And then later on, people came up to me and said, look, my girlfriend has been through this, what can I do? A Frenchman, he came up to me and he literally couldn't speak, but finally he managed to say, I have 2 daughters, how do I know they've been abused? So it was a very gripping thing. And in Montreal too, there was a girl who said that a close family member, she finally said it was her father, had been abused. So I find that there's also like disclosures for the first time in public at these book readings. In Armenia, I just came back from there. I was in Dilijan. It was in a United World College school. It's a bit different because it's a population that's much younger, and usually at that life stage, the people who have been abused usually may still be in denial or trying to still come to grips with what may have happened.
So in your experience, actually this is a very common problem, right? Though we don't tend to talk about it.
Yeah.
So what is your advice to people out there? One is in breaking the silence,
Yeah.
and do you think storytelling helps and sharing helps?
Definitely. Here in the US, it's 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys have been sexually abused, and it really is really sad, the statistics. In Germany, it's 1 in 7. In India, based on a government study in 2007, is 53% of children. So the numbers really say quite a lot, and in some cases, it could be actually underreporting. So I think we all have a role to play. Basically, in my talks, I try to talk about grooming behavior by pedophiles.
Can you explain what is grooming for people who don't know what is grooming?
Point. So grooming is basically pedophiles try to instill trust, try to get your trust as either a caretaker, a parent, or somebody involved in child protection, and also try to instill the trust with the child that he or she is trying to eventually abuse. So that's called grooming behavior. So basically, I try to in my talks, tell people that if you see somebody who's always so available to take care of your child or your ward, knows the lingo, the current lingo, what children say and stuff. For example, kids these days would say something like sick, and they mean school, and then they know the lingo. It's always favoring one child over the others in the family. It's always bearing gifts. These are all red signs. It's not necessarily a good thing.
Okay. And what is the help available to survivors, especially in countries which are under-resourced? Are there online resources that people can access? And what about even online health groups? Are there any?
Yeah, for example, in India, where I worked for 5 years, there is Childline that basically is a hotline that parents and social workers and educators can call and get help. There's Bachpan Bachao Andolan, which is an organization set up by the Nobel Peace Prize laureate Kailash Satyarthi. So it also helps people who are involved in this thing, child sexual abuse, child sex trafficking. So there are resources out there, and it's quite fortunate. It's gaining more awareness than compared to, say, a decade ago.
And in India, we have very strong laws. POCSO is that's the Prevention of
Children from Sexual Offences Act.
Prevention of Children from Sexual Offences Act, and it's very strong in the sense that it protects the rights of the children, and you have a responsibility as an adult to inform the authorities if a child comes to you. So I would say Google the act, refresh your memory, learn about it so that you know what to do. There are also a lot of resources out there in trying to understand how a child could be groomed or a person could be groomed, and it's a long process. So identify the signs of this kind of perpetrator behavior and then believe the child.
Yes.
I think belief is also something that we need to work on, because we often fail children. They come and tell us their stories and we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Does that come up in your...
Yes, basically the most damaging disclosure is when the child is not believed. That is really, especially by the immediate parent, and that can be really difficult for the survivor moving forward. Just want to take your point again about the POCSO Act, the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act. That was only enacted in 2012.
Yes.
And before that, there was really no way to file a case if a boy had been sexually abused, because the law before that was really focused on women and children, on girls. And so now it takes into account boys, and also all forms of sexual abuse, not just by penis and vaginal intercourse. So also other forms of using anal sex, or we're using objects. So as a gruesome Methodist, really glad that law is now in place.
Okay, so don't forget, get her book. It's on Amazon, right?
Amazon, Google, Kindle,
yes.
Kobo.
Okay, and we are going to be talking about it, and hopefully she'll come to India and talk about it as well. Moving on, you and I are going to present at the Paris Peace Forum on the Global Diplomacy Lab. So since you're a founding member of the Diplomacy Lab, can you explain to our audience what it is? Because they've seen me use the hashtag often, but
yes.
they don't really know what it is, because it's actually an invite-only, member-driven organization.
Yeah.
So could you explain?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't really like to call it a think tank, maybe more like a work tank. But we
work tank.
Yeah, and
that's interesting. Yeah,
we try to basically turn diplomacy on its head, because the more we have the same traditional actors involved, we would just come up with basically not necessarily make a lot of headway. So what we do is involve other people. For example, we have a music conductor from an orchestra in our group, several artists, architects, and people like that. And we use different methodologies like hackathons, innovative methods like fishbowl concept to try and break the way how to try and get things changed. So it's really interesting. Our patron is German Foreign Minister Dr. Heiko Maas, and we are supported by a secretariat based at the German Foreign Office. And we are funded by the BNW Foundation, the Bosch Foundation, the Global Leadership Academy under the GIZ, and the Mercator Foundation. So it's really a very supportive network of people who come together to try and make things a little bit better.
So if you're at the Paris Peace Forum, come and say hello to Eirliani and myself. We are going to be there talking about... Yeah, it's on 11th to 13th of November in Paris. We are pretty excited about it. And actually earlier this year in Bonn, in June, we presented at the Global Media Lab by the Deutsche Welle group.
Yeah.
And that was very interesting, because we created an interactive exercise to talk about sexual violence in
yes.
public spaces. So Eirliani and I have collaborated on several areas, and it's always fun to be...
It was quite funny because
we were on the same team.
Yeah, we were trying to interact. We were trying to prepare for the Deutsche Welle event in Bonn, as I mentioned. And you were at one point in the Amazonian forest.
I was in the Amazon rainforest,
and then at one point I was training out in the Arctic in Canada. And so when I was engaged somewhere else outdoors, she was the one that was picked up the stuff and got things going. And when she was in the rainforest with no signal, I was able to pick up and then move on. So it was really a great tandem playing tag.
Yeah.
Great
so coming back to the Arctic, can you tell them what were you doing in the Arctic and on the ice?
Yeah, so I am training to go to ski to the North Pole in April. And so I spent the last 2 winters training in Nunavut, which is in Arctic Canada, 1 or 2 degrees south from the North Pole. And what I did there was to pull a sled, 190 pounds, which is 87 kilograms, circumnavigating the frozen Frobisher Bay. That was 101 kilometers or 63 miles over 5 days. And then just training to deal with polar bears, frozen frigid conditions like minus 40 degrees F or C, whiteout conditions, gale force wind. So it was pretty crazy, but it was an all-girls team. It was super fun.
And why are you doing this? Why are you putting yourself through all this?
Well, when I was in the foreign service, I dealt with the media a lot, and they love a cookie story. And back in Singapore, it really gets media attention. A former diplomat giving out all this to do something like really a bit out there. So people are very supportive because I'm trying to raise awareness on child sexual abuse, and I think it works as a media strategy, so to speak.
Well, you certainly have my attention. And so you're planning 3 treks, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about it?
So I'll be training in Greenland this coming March, and then I'll be off to the North Pole. It's just the last degree. It's just 10 days. But again, it's pretty dangerous because of the melting ice cap. The ice flows kind of drift southwards, and you're trying to get north. And we also have polar bears to contend with. There's 35,000 of them over there. So
how many?
35,000.
35,000 polar bears in a melting snow cap, and you can see Eirliani, she's a petite young woman. I don't know how you're going to handle that.
Well, just not right now, just training to be able to pick up the rifle without thinking too much about it. So that's super important reflex, yeah.
Wow.
And then later on, hopefully either December next year or later, to go to the South Pole. And that will be a much longer trek, like 566 miles. And that will take us 40 days. It's doing a half marathon every day.
Why do you do what you do?
Because I'm convinced that we need to put a stop and break the taboo surrounding child sexual abuse. If only just one child is saved from having to go through what a lot of people have been through, I think it's worth it.
So, what's your message to all the young girls out there wondering what they're going to do with their lives?
I think, look at me. I never have been an athlete, never have been for one minute. And I feel that if you just train, if you're mentally quite strong, you can really do anything you put your mind to. So for me, messages to all girls out there, just go out and do it.
Great. So thank you, Eirliani, for sharing your life with us and all these words of wisdom. Thank you for the work you do, and wish you all the very best.
Thank you also. Thank you for your amazing support. You're really somebody I really look up to. So it's just been so great too that we can come together again here at Yale.
Thank you. So I'm going to try and fix this video because I don't know what happened. But please, Eirliani is tagged on this. If you have questions for her, leave it in the comment section. When she has the time, she's going to respond. And my next episode is on Wednesday with World Fellow Joy Olivier from South Africa. She's another